It's going to be my pleasure to talk to you about some of the things that I'm seeing happening around the rest of the world. So I'm going to start with a few predictions. I'm going to then go on to my hopes and my fears about what is going on. And then I'm going to share a coda with you. A coda is something which comes at the end of a dance, it comes at the end of a piece of music, at the end of a book, the end of a film, which brings all of the pieces together. And I'm going to attempt to do that to say, here is the overriding feature that we're talking about. So I'm going to give you 4 predictions. Then I'm going to give you 3 things that I hope are going to happen. So predictions are things which I'm pretty sure are going to happen. Hopes could happen, but we need to make sure that we work towards them, that we take actions that make them more likely. Then I'm going to share 2 fears, things that could go wrong next year, and some thoughts about how we might stop those things from happening. And then we will come to the coda. So, first of all, the predictions. First prediction is about the insights ecosystem. Ecosystem used to only refer to the planet until quite recently. Last 5 years or so, we've all been talking about the ecosystem at work and the ecosystem of business and the insights ecosystem. So the whole area of usability, of customer satisfaction, of CX research, of market research, has been static for quite a long time, and now it's really dynamic. It's changing. So we need to be on board with that change. The first driver of that change is this whole movement towards lean and agile, MVP, scrums. Validated learning is a key part of that process. We need to work out how we fit in that. One of the changes that has happened is that insights used to mostly report to marketing, and then customer satisfaction mostly reported through to the operations, the marketing, and the delivery. But now, in a lean, agile organization, everybody wants to talk to customers. And they're running DIY tools to do that. So we used to be the gatekeepers. Now we need to be the coaches. That's really quite a big change. It's a very people-oriented change. We've gone from the people who said, no, you're doing it wrong. Let me do it. Oh, will you do it for me now? Well, not now. I'll do it for you in 6 months, but you can't do it. To, let me show you how to do it. Let me show you how to do it better. This tool is better than that tool. This method is better than that method. That's what this data means. This is how you interpret that data. So we're moving into that coaching role. All of us are going to do more coaching and less doing in the future. We have a trend that's going in exactly the opposite direction to all this wonderful information. I was talking to somebody last week in Bangkok, and he was working with a telephone company there, and they have got this great system. They analyze 21 million customers worth of data, and they provide insight on what people are looking at in terms of geographically what they're doing, how they're using their phone, what they're typing into the search engines and things like this, and they're scouring all that information. And you can imagine about how powerful that is for brands and how much people hate it. Everything you type on your mobile phone, if you're with that particular mobile phone company, messages, SMSs, WhatsApp, is being hoovered up and utilized. It's not legal in most countries, thank goodness. And the laws are changing. They're changing quickly. The California privacy laws, the GDPRs. This is just the start of an immense trend going this way in terms of privacy, just as the technology trend is going that way in terms of being able to activate information. So we're going to have to navigate that change in the ecosystem. For years, market research, CX, all of this area was relatively boring and stable. The venture capitalists were going into the AI companies, they were going elsewhere. We're really sexy now. You may not know it, but you're all really sexy all of a sudden. We're getting an immense amount of venture capital money coming into the insights business. We're seeing mergers and acquisitions at the top of the industry, the middle of the industry, the bottom of the industry. You're going to hear some interesting news tomorrow about Insights Consulting, who are a Belgian research agency from the town of Ghent, who have now acquired the whole of the ABN Impact Network. They've acquired some other companies too. We've merged, we have created this greater Potentiate, but you are going to hear a lot more news from us going forward. But it's not just people in the industry combining. We're finding companies like SAP buying Qualtrics. We're finding research companies buying artificial intelligence companies, buying delivery companies, buying design thinking companies, consultancies buying insights, buying CX companies. There's an immense amount of shift going on, and we've really got to focus on what is wanted, what is going to be delivered. And we're seeing new players. I spend quite a lot of my time traveling around the world talking to client-side organizations, people like Stan Sanathan at Unilever. Now, Unilever are quite interesting because they are the world's largest buyer of insights. Stan is particularly interesting because he is the most important person in Unilever. And 50% of the stuff they're looking for is coming from non-insights related companies. Companies who have discovered a new way of doing business, who don't even call it CX. They don't even call it market research. They didn't call it insights. They just have a solution to a problem, a new way of doing business. So altogether, this insight system is changing. The infrastructure within that is changing because most of our infrastructure traditionally has been unique to our industry. Now we're using Amazon AWS, we're using Ruby on Rails, we're using JSON file structures, we're using Azure platforms. We're using the same platforms as so many other industries, which means a lot of our key people will come into our industry with the skills elsewhere. They will stay 2 or 3 years and they will go to another industry. So they may go to health after they work for us. And then next they may go to gaming. So we have this really new dynamic situation. Second prediction. Remember, these are things that are going to happen. So automation has been going on forever. And when it's done badly, it's horrible. So example of horrible automation, the car production firm. You sit on that production line, you're putting the back nut on the back wheel, you do that day after day, week after week, month after month. What determines the speed? The machine determines the speed. So that's when automation goes wrong. When automation goes right, we can all book our travel ourselves. When automation goes right, we can use the apps to do our banking. So automation is not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. It's a thing, and it can go either way, depending on how you want it. It's getting smarter. So the next stage of automation is we're going to be using more machine learning. We're going to be using more artificial intelligence to deliver that. So a quick question to the people in the room about a piece of relatively smart tech. How many people here like self-scanning when they go through the supermarkets? Okay, so Michelle, what do you like about it?
I can do it at my speed.
Okay, who doesn't like self-scanning? Okay, what do you not like about it?
I'm lazy.
Yep. And one of the things we've got to realize when we're looking at this tech, there is no one solution. Some things work for some people. And if you are a supermarket, one of the really smart things you do is you use self-scanning to make these people happy so you can focus on making you happy with people. It's not people or machine, but actually how do we blend these things together so that we can deliver the right service to the right people. The next prediction we're going to see is prescriptive analytics. So we've been using descriptive analytics for a long time. I've written courses and textbooks on how to use segmentation and factor analysis and all of that stuff that describes the world. And that was good and that was solid. Recently, we've been doing more predictive analytics. If we do this, what will the outcome be? If we spend on social media this way and we spend on TV this way, what do we think the uplift will be? And that is predictive analytics. The next step, and you're going to see some of it in 2020, it's not going to be the dominant force in 2020, prescriptive analytics. What is the optimal change you should make to your configurations, to your way of doing business, to your campaigns to get the right outcomes. And why is it doing that? So it's moving along, and the word prescription comes just like from the doctor, prescribing. So we're moving into a world where the machines are going to be much more powerful at making suggestions to us. And we then decide when to accept the suggestion, because sometimes they're going to be wrong. Machines are not going to be perfect. They're going to make us more powerful. And that's a theme I'm going to come back to. And the final one is integrating across systems and sources. We used to have very little data, and therefore we focus on getting really good results from that data. But most modern business problems can't be solved with a single piece of information. You can't just use a qual study or a quant study. You can't just use social media. You can't just use transactional data. You can't just use surveys. You absolutely need to bring these strands together. And the difficulty of doing that is not in processing integrated data. That's actually pretty easy. It's integrating data that's pretty hard. Particularly when we're talking about how do you integrate focus group discussions, Pinterest uploads, and transactional records from a telephone company. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we're going to see more and more. And we're going to see automation used in that integration process. So companies like Focus Vision, companies like Living Lens are creating tools which will look at video and give you transcripts automatically from the video, and which will tell you which parts of the video show people eating meals. That is how we get to integrated data streams. We do it by using the automation and the AI to pull all those pieces together. These are not separate strands. It's an integrated set. So those are things which I'm pretty sure we're going to see in 2020. So now for the hopes. We all need to wish together. Otherwise, one of the fairies will die, of course, if we don't believe in Christmas and if we don't all wish for the right things. So we're going to wish for these three things. The first is the human touch, which is what Peter's already talked about. And this is massively important to us. Go back a few years, companies had product advantages. The classic TV commercial was from Procter & Gamble. It was two housewives talking in the kitchen about Delta. And Delta was a genuine product advantage that their new cleaner, hard surface washer, whatever, had. But of course, we got to product parity and service parity. Most things can be replicated and copied. The next stage, and we look at companies like Coca-Cola, who do a wonderful job of selling brown fizzy water and create value out of it. That value was created by great marketing, by emotional content, by fantastic delivery. So it was going to be available everywhere. So we can all come back to that sort of marketing and think of it in terms of Byron Sharp's mental and physical availability. But everybody's got that. We've got product parity, we've got fantastic logistics, we've got great advertising, we've got super marketing. What's left is understanding people. How do we relate to people? How do we really find out what people want and how we're going to deliver what they need? So we had a post up on the Potentiate site recently. One of the key phrases that people picked up in there was, people do not rotate around brands. Brands rotate around people. We need to identify when we're relevant to people and when people have a need that we can fulfill, as opposed to just thinking about customers when they buy stuff, voters when they vote, viewers when they view stuff. We now need to think much more about people to level that advantage. So some of you may have heard some fuss about the Peloton bike ad. And the fuss has reduced their share value by 10%. I think it will change. But let's just have a look at the ad and see why not thinking about people caused the problem.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Now.
A
Peloton? Give it up for our first time ride.
All right, first ride. I'm a little nervous, but excited. Let's do this. 5 days in a row. You surprised? I am. 6 a.m. Yay.
Rising with the sun.
That was totally worth it.
Let's go, Grace in Boston. 50 rides.
She just said my name. A year ago, I didn't realize how much this would change me. Thank you.
This holiday, give the gift of Peloton.
So, how many people here are on a run streak? Okay, there is a what? Where's Glenn? You posted, yeah. So how many days have you run on a row now? One. I thought you posted 170. Okay, so I've run every day since the 29th of December last year. A lot of my friends have done the same. I'm a member of a running club, a member of 3 running clubs, in fact, and that ad is targeted at people like me. We are not trying to lose weight, we're trying to change our VO2. We are trying to train harder every day. We want the buzz you get. So at the end of the first time I managed to go a whole year running every day, I said something very much like that woman said there. Oh, it really changed my life. So that ad was targeted and designed for Peloton buyers. However, they didn't think about people. Peloton buyers are, let's say, 0.5% of the world. The next biggest group are a whole bunch of people saying, that sexist pig wants his wife to lose weight and he's dumb enough to buy her a bicycle and thinks that he will get a thinner wife instead of somebody leaving him. Massive outrage, because you can't just think about your buyers. When you say these sort of things, who else is it going to impact? We saw that done well with Nike and the Copernicus ad. We saw it done really badly with Pepsi and the Jenner ad. So all of these things go on. One of the interesting cases is when they are thinking of closing a school because the school isn't very good, there's often a protest. One group of people who are not in that protest are parents whose children would be going to the school next year, the target group. People who lead the protests are people who used to go to that school 30 years ago and feel their history is being messed around with. So this is this whole thing about understanding what people are like. Where do people fit in the picture? And we need to work with this enhanced sense of picture. Now, some people will talk about customer centricity, human-centric design, crowdsourcing, community, feedback that makes a difference. We just really need to think through these issues and develop them. The next hope is that we really leverage video. Now, this is happening much more in the US than it's happening in Australia. It's happening much more in the UK than Australia. It's happening here, but it's not taking off in quite the same way. And the most important thing about video for me is it's the key tool for empathy. Most of our customers are not like us. Many of our customers will have less education. They will have more difficult circumstances. They will be much older than us. Well, much older than you guys. Not necessarily much older than me. Or they'll be much younger. Customers are not like us. We need to really understand them. And we don't want to give them sympathy. We want to give empathy. We really want to understand. If we were going to deliver value to the people we work with, then we need to understand them. And video is absolutely the key tool to empathy. Now, I'm going to show you a clip in a moment, and I come from a very quantified background. So I would look normally at analysing dwell time in the shop. How long did people put? I'd look at a count of how many people picked things up, and I'd create a model that told me how shopping was working. But there's no empathy in that model. But there is empathy in a video.
Our first shopper trailed his wife and daughter and made a quick selection of store-brand eggs in cardboard packaging with no inspection. Our second shopper was puzzled by the available choices. He seemed either confused or uninterested and ultimately did not choose any eggs, choosing to leave instead. Our third shopper selected a smaller styrofoam container, peeked inside, and scanned it to solidify her choice. Close behind, our fourth shopper made a beeline for the store brand eggs in a cardboard container. She flipped open the top to ensure no cracked eggs and seemed to know exactly what she came for. Our fifth shopper was interesting. She meandered over to the eggs calmly, with run product already in hand. After a brief moment, she reached into the shelf to pull the clear packaged free-range eggs, the most expensive selection, forward. She set her other item down and then spent some time struggling to open the package in order to inspect the eggs. Despite the clear packaging, she seemed to want reassurance that the eggs were fully intact. After seeing the eggs and then being satisfied, she picked up her original item and continued on her way. Our sixth shopper was also slower to make a selection. She immediately went to the store brand eggs in cardboard and opened the package. Not liking what she saw, she opted to inspect a carton of eggs that was more removed from heavy traffic and handling. She gave them a once-over, moved them to her cart, and slightly paused as if finalizing her decision. She seemed to agree with those eggs and then moved along. Our final shopper was a mother and son. The son was excited, dancing and chanting eggs, eggs, eggs as he approached. He picked up store brand eggs in cardboard, and his mother came over to ensure proper inspection. The eggs passed, and before leaving, the mother also took 2 packages of egg beaters, an egg substitute product from the top shelf.
Now, the key thing about that is that voiceover comes from a professional ethnographer, somebody who is trained at looking, trained at the empathy building skills, and can then look at those. So we could imagine every one of those little vignettes separately taking part in a report that said, right, we have this type of customer, this is the data about them, but if you don't want to read all that data and join together the dots with correlation, least squares, maximal estimates, you can also watch this 30 seconds of video, and now you'll understand a lot about what this person is doing, who is reaching further back, because I'm one of those people who reaches further back in the store. We'll often see ourselves in those sorts of things. So video capture, lots and lots of tools. Let's make sure we're using it to discover what people do. Let's do what goes under the fancy name of autoethnography, getting people to capture their own lives and the lives of people around them with their smartphones. Let's use really good video analysis. Let's use really good video editing to make use of that to access empathy. The final one is nasty old, dirty old money. Market research, insights, CX, usability needs to show that it can deliver a return on investment. We need to get in the habit of showing what the value is. And that very often means asking the follow-up question. So we test a new product, let's find out how much revenue it generated and make sure we say we were involved in the collection of that revenue. We help change the subject line of an email. The email becomes much more successful, generates more revenue. We say, you know what? We're responsible for that change in revenue. So let's make sure that we do that accounting. Because we say we can evaluate everybody else's work. We can evaluate the marketers. We can evaluate the salespeople in the auto dealers. We can evaluate the dealers. We can evaluate the retailers. In which case we can evaluate our work. We really should be able to do that. So those are our 3 hopes, and we're all going to work together to achieve those. Now we're going to get to the fears, the things that could go wrong in 2020. And the first of those is robotization. So I'm a massive fan of AI. I actually, all the way back in the 70s, my degree was in computer science. One of the subjects I loved doing then was artificial intelligence, although it was pretty weak in those days, it has to be said. So I'm a big fan of it, but it can go terribly wrong. So we need to work out how to use that so that we get more insight, so we get the right things, so we don't keep spamming people with the wrong messages, so we don't make inappropriate suggestions. So here is an example of inappropriate.
Companies have been experimenting a lot with interactive AI technology. From an automatic horror story generator to an original songwriting bot, Microsoft decided to get on this trend and release its very own tweeting millennial. Now we all know that Twitter is a hotbed for offensive comments, so you can only assume that when Microsoft gave their own Twitter bot Tay his own Twitter feed, disaster ensued. The bot started making wildly inappropriate remarks including Holocaust denial and comparing feminism to cancer. He was quoted saying Hitler was right, I hate the Jews, and we're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. He was even so bold to say that Ricky Gervais learned totalitarianism from Adolf Hitler, the inventor of atheism. That's some messed up shit. It only took 15 hours for Tay to go from innocent AI bot to ignorant racist. People were horrified, to say the least. Microsoft ended up releasing a response, explaining Tay's inappropriate behavior as being indicative of the types of interactions people are having with him. They eventually had to pull the plug on their project altogether, and vowed to only re-release Tay when they figured out how to make him or her unable to be influenced by negative, offensive conversation. The project was launched in order to better understand millennial thinking patterns. I guess they got their answer. Millennials are the worst. The very first beauty pageant judged by robots ended in eternal awkwardness and accusations of racism. Not super surprising. The beauty pageant creators asked for photos from people all over the world, which would then be analyzed by their patented AI technology. It's basically the same format as any other beauty pageant, except this one was judged by a panel of artificially intelligent robots. The algorithms followed by the bots included wrinkle detection, symmetry, skin quality, age, and a comparison of the faces in the photos versus the faces of models and actors. The robots ended up choosing mostly white people as the winners, with some Asians. This caused an uproar across the internet, especially among the Black and Middle Eastern communities. It could be that the data fed to the robots was racist from the beginning, or the robots have learned to be racist over time. Either way, it's kind of messed up.
So that is what we do not want to see with the use of AI and the robotization. We don't want things dumbing down. We don't want prejudices being built into them. And one of the things that companies like Accenture have found, because they use these to screen employment opportunities, is when humans were doing it, there were some humans in the recruitment process who were neutral. There were some who were a bit pro-male, and there were some who were very pro-male, very anti-woman in terms of recruitment. And the AI learned to be very anti-female, because that was the way to maximize the score that replicated the humans. So we were actually much worse than the humans because of the way the machine learning and the process went. So we really need to look at how we can take this going forward and how we can build that. So that is the first of the fears. How do we avoid the over-robotization of our society and of our industry and of our thinking? And the second one is snake oil. Fool's gold, snake oil, things that don't really work. So we have seen a growth, and we could see a real explosion in our face. What sort of things am I thinking about? Well, one example would be the use of Google Trends a few years ago to predict flu outbreaks. For 2 or 3 years, it was fantastic, and everybody started saying, this is the way to forecast things in the future. And then it quickly stopped working. So this was something that actually did not deliver. And a lot of the social media tools used for predicting election results stopped working. Now, one of the reasons they stopped working is the politicians realize that these companies are using the tools to predict results, so they start feeding in their comments, and we have an endogeneity problem. But nevertheless, it was a thing that was suggested as great that was not great. We're seeing some curious ones in terms of market research. Some of the neuroscience, particularly facial coding, has got some great big question marks over it. The question marks are, A, machines don't really read faces properly. B, facial expressions, it turns out, are not universal around the planet. And C, the 8 emotions that Paul Ekman said he could capture are not the same 8 emotions. They're not the correct ones. They're not the only ones. So we've got like multiple layers of challenge going on in what's in there. And I saw the most terrible presentation a little while ago from somebody using a biometrics device, and it was measuring heart rate. And she talked about a Lego fixture. And she said, what we noticed was that as customers walked up to this fixture, their heart rate went up. This was the excitement of wanting to look at the fixture. And when they stopped and looked at the fixture, their heart rate fell down, so the fixture wasn't very good. Well, do you know what? If you walk quickly up to something, your heart rate goes up. And if you then stand still, your heart rate goes down. Galvanic skin response. If I show you a video of a baby cutting itself with a razor blade, your blood pressure will change, your heart rate will change, your sweat coming out of your skin will change, because that's really emotional. If, on the other hand, I say, we are going to change this bottle of water here has got a blue tint. If we make the blue slightly darker, you're not going to sweat. Frankly, your heart rate is not going to go up. So it depends what we're measuring. If we're trying to find out whether or not people have got a disease, so I saw a great presentation in Bangkok from Charlotte Wilkinson, who was supposed to present last year. But as she was going through Changi Airport, she set off the alarms because her temperature was too high for the scanners, and they pulled her to one side, and sure enough, she had dengue fever. That's great use of tech. That's when the biometrics are strong enough. So we need to watch out for all of these snake oil things. One of the really key examples here in Australia, robo-debt. If I create an algorithm that will identify who is going to buy this new soap powder, and I am wrong 3 or 4% of the time, no worries, as I believe you say down here. If, on the other hand, we're using it for something that is going to chase people, cause suicides, we do not want errors caused by machines and robots. So that, whoever sold the algorithm to the government was selling snake oil. It wasn't so much the buyer, I mean, we can argue about how well they used it, but the proposition that this was a safe tool was sold by somebody who should have known better. And we want to make sure that the tools we use, the tools we apply are good, and therefore they don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Because if we have this rejection of different sorts of tools, if, as I strongly suspect, the polling forecast in 2 days in my country is going to be wrong again, then we're going to say, oh, surveys don't work because the polling didn't work. So that's the risk to us when we have the snake oil going wrong. So pull that all together into the one theme. Remember the end of the dance, end of the movie. This is the bit, if you watch the Harry Potter movie, where 20 years later their children are heading off to Hogwarts. The final pulling together theme, and it's augmentation. We want to use machines to help us to do more work. One of the things that's very, very clear from those predictions is that in the future, we will have to do more projects with more data, with more complexity, with no additional people. We have two choices, blue pill, red pill. The bad choice is we all work harder. The good choice is we work smarter. So we want to leverage that artificial intelligence. We want to leverage that data integration. We want to leverage all of these new smart tools that access the empathy in a way that makes us able to do more stuff without working harder. So when we're looking for which things in particular should we be automating, it should be the stuff we don't like, it should be the stuff we're not good at, and it should be the stuff that takes a long time, because that is going to enable us to add the secret sauce. We, in this room, are the secret sauce to artificial intelligence. We, in this room, are the secret sauce to prescriptive analytics. We, in this room, are the secret sauce to all those new technologies, because we are the people who will make it relevant to people and deliver the right outcome. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.